DETV Sports Update is powered by DART, Delaware's transit service. Moving forward. Transit service. Moving forward.
And welcome back live to another edition of DETV Sports here on a Monday, and a special edition as it is NFL Draft Week. The NFL Draft finally here, coming up on Thursday night in Detroit, Michigan. So we've got a great crew here today to preview the upcoming draft on Thursday. We'll give you some of our favorite prospects and also talk about the Philadelphia Eagles and what they might do here just down the road. So as always, we are joined by Jason McCall, Matthew Maurer, and then a special edition today as we welcome in from the NFL on Fox, a longtime coach. You know him here in the area. It's Bill Harman. Bill, appreciate you joining us here for another NFL draft.
Nick, great to be here with you guys. We're really looking forward to our discussions tonight, and great to have Martin with us as well.
And there it goes. We are also joined by, from the News Journal, covers the Eagles and the NFL here for the Delaware News Journal. It is Martin Frank, and we are going to be joined by Martin here to talk a little bit about what the Eagles might do coming up here later on this week. They'll be picking at number 22. So we talked about it. The draft is Thursday night. Going to be a loaded offense in the draft. There's been 19 offensive guys drafted in the first round just 3 times. It's been 1968, 2004, and 2009. And the way that this draft is trending is that record could be broken here in 2024. That's how high-powered offense has got in this draft coming up. But we're all going to start, guys, with the Philadelphia Eagles and our guest, Martin Frank from the News Journal. Martin, got a chance to see you down in Indy at the Combine not that long ago, and here we are just a week until the NFL Draft. How has that process been for you ahead of Thursday?
Yeah, it's been kind of a long process. I mean, you know, where the Eagles are picking in the first round at number 22, there's so many possibilities. You know, you can trade up, you can kind of stay where you are, you can trade, hope someone falls down to you, or you can trade back. I mean, you know, there are just so many possibilities, more so than in any recent draft. I mean, I think the past few years you kind of had a pretty good idea of which way the Eagles were going. They were also picking lower. Last year they picked number 10. The year before they traded up from 15 to 13, and the year before that they traded up from 12 to 10. So you knew they were going to get, like, you know, a really good player, or, you know, that was their belief. And this year, when they're at 22 and so many quarterbacks going, possibly like in the first 15 picks, you're talking about maybe 6. I mean, 4 of them in the top 5 or 6 perhaps. You know, there are just so many possibilities. It's hard to predict what's going to happen just yet.
And as Bart alluded to, maybe this year more than some of the previous drafts, it's going to be a very mysterious and intriguing first round come Thursday night. Well, Martin, just to start here before we get into the Eagles and maybe what they're thinking on Thursday, let's start just with a little recap of free agency. Eagles with some big names added there. Bryce Huff, Saquon Barkley, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. He's back home here with the Eagles after a year in Detroit. Just what is your summary of the Eagles free agency and how you think they did in that regard ahead of the draft?
Yeah, I mean, that's something like Howie Roseman tries to do every year, like to address the biggest needs on the team in free agency. So that way, when you're going into the draft, they don't have to draft for a need per se. I was kind of stunned by the Saquon Barkley signing just because of the amount of money they paid him. But, you know, I could also see that's kind of how the Eagles operate. I mean, they're built around offense first. And when you can get a chance to get a guy like Barkley, who's, you know, an elite running back in pretty much every aspect of it, you know, running the ball, catching the ball out of the backfield, and also in pass protection. I mean, you know, I could see why the Eagles did it. I was just kind of surprised they spent all that money on him. As far as Bryce Huff, you know, the edge rusher, he's replacing Hassan Reddick, who the Eagles traded to the Jets because technically he was getting too expensive for them. He was, you know, a $22 million cap hit, and he wanted a new contract. And, you know, so the Eagles traded him rather than have him perhaps be unhappy in training camp and then maybe lingering into the season. Huff is unproven. I mean, Reddick led the Eagles in sacks the last 2 years with 16 and 22 and then 11 last year, but he was also approaching his 30th birthday, and if the Eagles were going to sign him to an extension, then you're talking about paying a guy like top of the market deal, the $25 million average annual value or average annual salary per year, for a guy into his mid-30s. And I think that was kind of a risk the Eagles didn't want to take. But, on the other hand, Huff was originally an undrafted free agent by the Jets, and he really only had one good year this past year when he had 10 sacks, and he was only playing 42% of the snaps. So, he's kind of unproven in that sense, and that's, a big ask, asking him to replace Hassan Reddick. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, that was, an interesting signing because, the fact that the Eagles let him go last year kind of exposed what they missed without him. I mean, the year he played for the Eagles, he tied for the NFL lead in interceptions, and the Eagles didn't really have a playmaker like that on defense this past year. So getting him back is, was a pretty big move. They also added Devin White at linebacker. They spent, I think, like $7.5 million for a one-year deal. He was the number 5 overall pick in 2019, I believe, the Buccaneers. And he's never really lived up to that, but he's still you guys saw what the Eagles put out there at linebacker last year. It's still a big upgrade. So overall, I would say that Howie Roseman, he kind of added to what the Eagles needed most of all. The one position he did not add at was cornerback. James Bradbury, who had a bad year last year, is back. Darius Slay's back. He's still a good cornerback, but he's 33 years old. And they added rookies last year, Keely Ringo in the 4th round, and then Eli Ricks, an undrafted guy. And both of those guys played quite a bit last year because they had to, and, mixed results, obviously. So that's kind of like going into the draft. Everyone's like, well, the Eagles need a cornerback, and they haven't taken one in the 1st round since 2002. So perhaps this could be the year where that happens. So I would say if they have a need heading into the draft, it could be cornerback.
And maybe we'll see them take a corner. Again, a lot can happen. It's going to be a mysterious Thursday. Coach, you have any questions for Martin?
Yeah, Martin, I'm really interested in what you think the offense is going to look like this year with Kellen Moore obviously coming in. Is this going to be more of a Moore's offense or still with aspects of Sirianni's?
Yeah, that's kind of like the $1 million question because, every time we try to ask Sirianni that, he's like, well, it's going to be meshing Kellen Moore's system with what he's done the past 3 years with the Eagles. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Moore's offense is kind of different from Sirianni's. He believes, in pass first, basically, where Sirianni had his most success with the running game. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Obviously you got a guy, Jalen Hurts, who spent like the last 3 years as Sirianni's starting quarterback, and he might be having to learn like an entirely new type of offense. But I think like the tush push will remain. That's obviously something that'll still be there. But then again, Jason Kelce isn't around to run it. So, can Cam Jurgens, who's going to replace Kelce at center, can he do it? So many questions about what that's going to look like. We have not yet had the chance to talk to Kellen Moore, so we haven't been asked, or we haven't been able to ask him that officially, like what kind of offense he plans to run. But that's obviously going to be a big question mark going into the season. And I think the Eagles would like to keep it as close to the best as possible, obviously, so it's not to give like opponents any kind of tip or whatever on what they might be doing.
Hey, Martin, it's Jason. How you doing? So my question for you would be, what type of defensive scheme do you expect the Eagles to run versus what type of scheme would you like for them to run, and how does the draft affect that? Yeah,
it's a good question because, they brought in a new defensive coordinator too, and Vic Fangio, and it's kind of like Fangio is the master of the system the Eagles tried to run the past 3 years, last year with Sean Desai, and then 2 years before that with Jonathan Gannon, who were both, Fangio disciples. So I don't think like the actual scheme will change a whole lot. They like to have as many versatile players as possible. Like, for example, at safety, they'd like to have a guy who can not only, defend the pass, but also come up and play in the box and, help stop the run or, cover a tight end or someone over the middle. It's still based on the pass rush. And I think that's been the Eagles' philosophy for, many years. When it works, it's great. Like in 2022, the Eagles had 70 sacks, and that made obviously Slay and Bradbury look like, great players in cornerback. And, so they had a great year, but then last year it kind of fell off a bit. And, the cornerbacks had to cover the receivers a lot longer. And, they were exposed to some extent. As we saw, their pass defense was like 31st in the NFL. It was awful. Obviously the players around Fangio will make the scheme work or not. I mean, that's the ultimate thing. But as far as Fangio, he's the one who's always been successful with his system. That goes back to his days as a head coach with the Broncos, and then after that, as a defensive coordinator, or before that too, as a defensive coordinator. So, it's better because they're getting the master who installed the system, but, it still comes down to the players actually executing it and making it work for the Eagles defense to be successful. Now, I would also add that, I don't think the Eagles are expecting to have a number 1 or top 5 rated defense. I mean, they just want to have a defense that's good enough so the offense can put more points on the board and thus, win games, even if they have to outscore people. So I don't think you're going to see anything like the 1985 Chicago Bears, for example.
Okay, so you're expecting more of a bend but don't break defense. Okay, so if you said not a top 5 defense, where do you think, with all the pieces put together, where do you think the Eagles would probably land going into the season?
I would think they would be middle of the pack. I mean, I think anywhere 15th or higher, they'd be ecstatic with, because, like I said, they're counting on the offense. I mean, that's what they're built around. So you add guys like Saquon Barkley to wide receivers like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I mean, and quarterback Jalen Hurts, you're obviously expecting to score a lot, and that's how they're building it. So, if they could have a top 5 offense and a middle of the pack defense, I mean, they're going to win a lot of games. So I kind of think that's going to be their strategy. And obviously for that to work, the pass rushers have to get after the quarterback. They have to be pretty successful in making the quarterback throw before he's ready. And that'll help out, Slay, Bradbury, if he's still on the team next year or this year, or whoever's playing the opposite cornerback with him. And the linebackers have to be better too. I mean, they were pretty awful last year. Nakobe Dean got hurt, missed most of the season, and the other 3 guys just didn't have it. So Dean is back healthy. Devin White should make a difference. So if those guys can stay healthy, the Eagles can have a pretty good defense. I mean, it's not going to be, like I said, it's not going to be like the '85 Chicago Bears, but it'll be good enough for them to win if the offense is doing its job.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see if they perform like the '85 Bears. I wouldn't have any complaints there. It might take a few moves to get them there, but we'll see how that goes. But now, Martin, let's focus on Thursday night and maybe the Eagles' draft strategy sitting at number 22. We were talking before we went on the air. 4 out of the last 5 years, Howie Roseman has traded up for the Eagles to get a guy that he has wanted. Do you see that happening this year with the Eagles sitting at 22? And what do you think yours and maybe Howie's dream scenario might be Thursday night?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a really good chance he'll move up from 22 just because, where the Eagles sit. If you look at it like this, if there are 4 quarterbacks taking the first 6 picks, possibly 6 with the first 15, then you're a top player is going to drop down out of the top 10 and maybe even out of the top 15. So if the Eagles are at 22 and they see someone they like at 15 or 16 or even 17, I mean, why not trade up and get a guy? Because technically he would be, a top 10 pick. So, if someone like that falls to them or in their range, I mean, I could definitely see Howie Roseman trading up to get that. And I think that's more likely than any other scenario. I mean, if by some chance one of those guys falls at 22, then that's fine, but that's taking a pretty big risk. And I mean, they could always trade back and everything like that, but I don't know. I just think there'll be too many good players dropping into their range where they can trade up and get one of those guys.
I am with you, Martin. I'm hoping by some way that Alabama corner Terrion Arnold decides to slip a little bit and maybe how he can go up and grab, in my opinion, the best corner in the draft. That'll be a dream scenario, but we'll see what happens come Thursday night. Martin, closing words here ahead of the Eagles draft on Thursday. Are you looking out for anything specific? What are you looking maybe to pay attention to Thursday?
Well, I would start with the first round pick. And there's going to be, Howie Roseman has made 6 trades last year in the draft. And he's traded, I believe, there was 6 last year if you include DeAndre Swift, getting a draft pick. So anything is on the table with him. Where the Eagles are originally or scheduled to draft this year, it probably will not look like that come Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I could see them, even though they signed Saquon Barkley, I could see them drafting a running back, like in maybe a 4th round pick. I could see them drafting offensive line in the 1st round. If someone like J.C. Latham from Alabama is in that 15 to 17 range, they can go up and get him. He could play guard right away and then eventually replace Lane Johnson. I wouldn't even put the idea of getting a wide receiver like in the 1st or 2nd round out of the question, because they didn't really address the number 3 wide receiver. And, if A.J. Brown in a couple of years, his salary cap hit is $41 million. So, they might not be able to afford him or Devontae Smith, who they just signed to an extension. So, why not? Like, if there's a really good wide receiver, draft him and let him serve as the number 3 wide receiver. And in a couple of years, you have a much cheaper alternative to Brown. But, so basically, if you were to say one thing to sum it up, I'd say pretty much anything and everything is on the table.
Well, there you have it. Martin Frank giving us a little insight into what the Eagles and Howie Roseman might do on Thursday night. I've been saying that they need a 3rd receiver. Some of the, least production you will see across the league for the Eagles in terms of wide receiver 3 production. So I would not be, wouldn't be upset if they were to go that route either. Martin, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Big week for you. I know with the Eagles draft coming up on Thursday night, so really appreciate your time as always.
All right. I always enjoy talking to you guys, and thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you, Martin. Again, you can catch all of Martin's work at the Delaware on the newsjournal.com. Of course, has some great articles up there right now talking about what the Eagles might do on Thursday night. So, again, Martin does great work. We always appreciate his time. And, again, he knows the Eagles. He can give us a little insight there. So, come Thursday night, we'll see what they decide to do. But they could go a lot of different ways in Detroit on Thursday. So there you have a little Eagles summary, guys. And now we'll dive in to the draft as a whole. It starts with Chicago, but you might not argue that's where the draft starts. We talked about the offense. Could be potentially 20 offensive players taken here in round number 1. Wide receiver and offensive line kind of having the most depth, at least in the early couple of rounds of the draft. The big question, though, coming in is the quarterback situation. You heard Martin say potentially 6 quarterbacks in the top 15 or even in the 1st round. We know for sure there's going to be 3, probably 4, but again, we could see 6 coming up in that 1st round. Teams with multiple 1st-round picks include the Chicago Bears, the Arizona Cardinals, and the Minnesota Vikings, who have a pick in 23 and 11. They might try to, one of the teams that have been trying to trade up and get that quarterback there. Just some quick news on the Vikings. We'll talk about it later, but Josh McCown, a new quarterback coach in Minnesota, coached Drake May in high school. Back when he was coaching high school football, so a lot of links there between maybe Drake May and Minnesota trying to get up to that number 3 spot. But there's a lot to get into, so let's jump right in and start with that top pick, guys, and that is the Chicago Bears. Last year, they trade with the Carolina Panthers. They get a haul in return. They give up the number 1 pick that became Bryce Young, so they get the number 1 pick this year from Carolina. And they've got their eyes, it seems, on the quarterback out of USC. He started at Oklahoma as a freshman and then, of course, to USC the last 2 years. Heisman Trophy winner in 2023. Another pretty good year here in 2024. And that, of course, is Caleb Williams, guys. Coming in, you could argue a unanimous number 1 pick. For sure not for us here at the desk. It's been kind of a debate all offseason, all draft process between who the number 1 quarterback is, but it's looking as if the Bears have made their choice, and that'll be Caleb Williams. 120 touchdowns to 14 interceptions in the last 3 years, can extend plays, unbelievable, can throw on the move. The arm strength is, in my opinion, one of the best in the class, obviously up there with Drake May. Great field vision. I think now with what Chicago has done, he's going to be a great fit, as any quarterback would be, maybe for what they've got now in Chicago. They've gone out and got a couple pieces in Keenan Allen. They have DJ Moore. They signed DeAndre Swift in the offseason. So a complete offensive kind of change here for Chicago. The defense was one of the top defenses in the league last year through the second half of the season. So Caleb Williams, guys, most likely going to be that number one pick, and he's going to come into, in my opinion, a pretty good situation in Chicago. Coach, what do you think of Caleb Williams to the Bears? He's pretty much locked in. You could argue at number one for Chicago. I won't get your quarterback rankings just yet, but what do you think of Caleb Williams to the Bears?
Well, certainly when you watch Caleb on tape, he makes so many difficult throws look easy. And I think the role of every GM and head coach and quarterback coach is to find the next Patrick Mahomes. He could possibly fit into that role at some point. I think at times his tight window throws can be a little off, but he is magnificent outside the pocket. He's a big playmaker. You talked about his arm strength, and all these top quarterbacks have great arms. I think it's more about poise in the pocket, playmaking ability when you're off schedule, meaning when you're out of the pocket and have to make different arm angle throws. He certainly has that capability. I think at times he can be a little roguish out there, but he certainly probably has the best upside of any quarterback in the draft. Does that make you a Patrick Mahomes? I'm not sure. But in that offense with those receivers that they have, I think he'd have a lot of excellent downfield threats, and he can definitely stretch the field vertically.
And Coach making a good point, obviously, that a lot of Caleb Williams' success may be off script in his 2 years at USC and even going back to his time at Oklahoma. The big thing for him is going to be playing on schedule, right, in the offense, taking that three-step drop and letting the ball go. I think he's going to be very capable of that as well. I have Caleb Williams as my number one ranked quarterback and number one player in the class going to Chicago, but we've got four people up here on the desk, and we've got three different quarterbacks that we have ranked at number one. So let's go to Jason and Matt. You guys not as high on Caleb Williams as our viewers might have known here throughout the draft process. Matt, we'll start with you here. Thoughts on Caleb Williams and his going to Chicago?
I mean, I agree with everything that was said. I mean, he's brilliant out of the pocket. I mean, he's probably one of the best creators out of the pocket. I do think he plays hero ball a lot.
Nickname Superman, I guess.
Right. And I'll say this. I'm going to give him fair credit. I would think in any other year I would probably have him number one. But I do think that Jaden Daniels, for me, is my number one QB. I just think him. I think Drake May has a lot more. Like, I've watched a lot of Drake May this week. I was very impressed with the throws he was making. He's a lot better prospect than I think people are giving him credit for, because Caleb Williams has come out and done so well this year. But I'll say this, could Caleb Williams come out and be the next Pat Mahomes? Sure, but let's not forget all these buzzwords of creating out of the pocket. We all said this about the guy that was just traded to Denver that the Jets took, number 2, which was Zach Wilson. That was the big buzz with him, that he's making off-platform throws and that he can operate out of the pocket. It's great when you can freestyle, but a lot of times in the NFL, it's the quick throws. It's knowing when to be a creator and when to just give your wideouts more chances to extend plays. So, look, he's got a lot to learn. All these guys do, but for me, he's just not the number one guy for me. That's all.
And Jason, let's open this up to a quarterback discussion now that we're going to hit all of these guys, right? 3 quarterbacks projected to go the first 3 picks. For me, and doing my rankings and my big board, I've got 3 of the top 4. I have Marvin Harrison as my number 2 overall prospect, but the rest of the quarterbacks are in the top 4. I love this quarterback class. I think it's 1A, 1B, and 1C. I have Caleb Williams ranked number 1, Jaden Daniels ranked number 2, and then Drake May ranked number 3, but it's all side by side. Jason, I know you're a Jaden Daniels guy as well. You and Matt here up on the desk. Your thoughts on Caleb Williams and that number 1 pick?
Well, I mean, at number 1, it's like you have to pick Caleb Williams. It's like the worst kept secret, like LeBron going to Cleveland in 03, the NBA draft. I mean, it's like it's set up perfectly for Caleb Williams to be drafted by the Bears. I mean, they've revamped the entire offense to give him weapons. I mean, he could have did that for Justin Fields. He's still been there, in my opinion. But, the offense is set up. The roster is set. I mean, they added a couple of receivers. They added to the line. I mean, they even added Swift as running back. I mean, all the holes that they had to fill on offense, they filled them. So now it's just a matter of a quarterback coming in and, picking up the slack and just doing what they need at quarterback to do. So maybe Caleb Williams gets them over the hump, but we all know that Chicago hasn't had the best history of drafting quarterbacks. I mean, let's just be honest about it.
It's true.
I mean, even with Justin Fields, but I think Justin Fields' lack of success in Chicago was again more due to the roster than him as a player. I will argue that with anyone. I think when he got out the pocket, you saw what he could do, and you saw he extended plays and made plays of his own. I mean, he was throwing to people who really. I mean, he's throwing to Cole Kmet and players like that. Chase Claypool a couple years ago. I mean, he wasn't throwing to anybody. I mean, Darnell Mooney had a hot start to the one half of the season and fell off the second half. So I mean, he really didn't have the consistent wide receiver play, and the running back by committee, they were all hurt. So it was just him out there by himself. So I still feel that he was shafted, if you will, in Chicago, but he's going to a better situation. But back to Caleb Williams being number one, you have to make this pick and set up for success. Do I see Pat Mahomes? Maybe.
I think if you tell a lot of people maybe, they may take that.
Maybe, but I think he'll be serviceable in that offense. I'll say that. And right now, Chicago just needs serviceable for the first year. I mean, because he's going to go through the up and downs of the growing pains of reading NFL defenses. The Pac-12 clearly isn't the NFL, so he's going to have some trouble reading defenses. But I think if he can, as Matt alluded to earlier, if he can stay in the pocket a little bit longer, I think he'll be able to see some instant success. Will it translate to a lot of wins? Not sure.
Win total set at 8.5 for Chicago coming up this season in 24-25. Just put something to rest. Had a chance to talk to him at the Combine just for a little bit. All the stuff you heard about him is absolutely false. One of the nice, seems like a fantastic guy.
So he doesn't want to own a team?
He does not want to own a team. I'll tell you, a lot of us take a lot of hits for stuff our parents say. That was one of them. I'll tell you, Caleb Williams is, again, everything you've been hearing is absolutely wrong. I love him as the number one pick, and of course, I think he's going to be a pretty good pro as well coming out there in Chicago. Let's head now. We're going to continue this quarterback discussion because we got Washington at number 2. Cliff Kingsbury taking over as the offensive coordinator there with the Commanders. New England Patriots sitting at number 3. Bill Belichick obviously out. Coach Mayo in there in New England. All three of those teams we talked about need quarterbacks, but it's Washington that's going to have their choice, right? Caleb will go 1. It's between Jaden Daniels and Drake May. That's been kind of the biggest back and forth throughout the entire draft process. Not necessarily who's going to be the 1 pick, but who's going to be the number 2 pick. You talk about the Commanders and some of their interesting pro day styles they did, bringing 20 guys in for their visits on one day. Jaden Daniels' agent wasn't too happy about that. He was very vocal on social media about it. The Commanders' word around is they have been very tight-lipped in their discussions on what quarterback they like. Everyone around the league you talk to saying they have to take Jaden Daniels. He should for sure be that number 2 pick. You check the odds in Vegas now, and what was Jaden Daniels is a huge favorite a little bit over a month ago. Coming into the week, Jaden Daniels still a favorite, but just a minor favorite as Drake May has come storming back, at least in those odds, to be the number 2 pick. So not a lot of talk on what Washington will do, Daniels or May. We would some or a lot assume it's Jaden Daniels from LSU, the Heisman Trophy winner, 40 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, was phenomenal in the pocket. You could argue maybe the best pocket passer potentially in the class. Great accuracy, especially on that deep ball. Completed 67% of his passes over 20 yards, the highest in the last 10 seasons in college football. Again, we give him that Randall Cunningham comp a little bit there, as I like to say it, for LSU. Again, I think he's going to be a phenomenal quarterback. And then you look at Drake May, guys, 6'4", 230. He's got the Josh Allen comp, athletic, very mobile out of the pocket. Struggled a little bit late in that season, but if you go back to the tape 2 years ago when he had a little bit of better guys around him, Josh Downs was there with him at North Carolina 2 years ago. And this year he had Tez Walker transfer in, but was held ineligible by the NCAA for a majority of the season. So he had no weapons really at North Carolina. Another great guy, or a great interview, of course, when you talk to him. Patriots raved about their interview with him during the Combine. Not afraid of contact, can run the ball. He comes from a family of athletes, dad a football player, brothers basketball and baseball players. A little bit raw, but a phenomenal deep ball and arm strength. You can't make it up. So you got 2 of these guys in Jaden Daniels and Drake May. Where do you guys stand on that battle, Coach? I know you like Drake May.
Well, I'm a big Drake May fan for a variety of reasons. Number 1, I love his competitiveness. Number 2, I love his physicality. Number 3, I love the genetics that comes from that family. And I think that really matters. He grew up in an incredibly uber competitive family, and they really pushed him. I also like his age. He's 21, Daniels is 23, and there's been some studies out recently that have talked about drafting of the younger quarterbacks has been a better move. Now, individually, you just never know, and I'm not trying to say that Jaden Daniels isn't a really good player. But if I had a choice, I would take May. I just like him. I think he's going to develop, give him some time, give him an offensive line where he can set up in the pocket. He's also very good outside the pocket, and there's just something about him. He's got that it factor to me. He's got poise, he's got a presence, and he's highly intelligent.
Again, Coach talked about Josh Allen comparisons. We're kind of getting with that arm strength, is able to run the ball. Coach said it. We asked him at the Combine if he could add one event to the Combine, what would it be? He said 3-point shooting contest. So, of course, he
got
can
that
shoot
from
the
his
basketball as well. If you talk about the Patriots, we're used to seeing Bill Belichick obviously be in command of that draft room. Elliott Wolf now going to have pretty much control for the first time there in New England. So they had a great interview with Drake May. Of course, everyone assuming that they're going to take the quarterback, what's ever left over, out of the top three. If it's Drake May or Jaden Daniels, I think either one will be a phenomenal consolation prize for New England. You do have a little bit of those rumors, guys, though, that maybe they're not ready to draft a quarterback or they need to fill up other positions before getting the quarterback. I am not a believer in that at all. I think you have to take the quarterback here at 3. I don't get that argument whatsoever. What do you guys think the Patriots do here? Are they going to stay pat and take a quarterback?
I think they'll take a QB. I think it just, to your point, I think whoever goes second, third will be either May or Daniels. I don't think they're going to – I don't even think it's going to be a long pause.
They should run the card in.
I think they're going to just, at the 15-minute clock, I don't even think that thing's going to go down to 0. I think they're going to be like, okay, we're taking the next guy. I really do. I mean, when you're in the top 3 and you have a need at QB, whether we like it or not, we can argue that the QB has become all-encompassing of NFL teams. We talked about it with the MVP award, which has become QB-driven. Let's be honest. In this league, at this point, you got to have a QB. So they're gonna take it. Yep. I don't think they're gonna punt on that. I think everybody's learned, and I'm not trying to rub salt in the wound. I think everybody's learned from the New York Giants when they took Saquon at 2. I think everybody's learned from that. Like, sometimes you got to go for what you know, and not for sometimes player value. So, like, I've heard people say, like, for example, Bowers, the tight end. A lot of people think he's a top 10 guy in this draft. They say might go out of the top 10, and that's because you're drafting at QB. You got to get a guy that's going to be able to lead the troops. So I think, I don't think this is going to be a no-brainer. I think it's going to go QB, and then the fun starts. That's what I think.
It's going to be a fun again, Jason. I like all 3 of these guys are in the top 4 of my big board. I think all 3 will be great. Yeah. What do you think?
I do agree that it's going to go QB. My order would be, of course, Caleb 1, Jaden Daniels 2, Drake May 3.
And this is prediction, you're saying?
Yeah. I do think Jaden Daniels fits better at 2, just based off the fact that Cliff Kingsbury is well-versed in working with mobile quarterbacks. And I think Jaden Daniels fits the mold, but he's the better pocket passer of the mobile quarterbacks that he's coached. Mm-hmm. So I think when you combine those skill sets with Cliff Kingsbury's offense, and then you already have weapons at the wide receiver position. I mean, Jaden Daniels is thrown to Brandon Ayuk at Arizona State. He threw to the neighbors at LSU. I mean, him inheriting Scary Terry McLaurin. I mean, that's.
Let's talk about Jaden Daniels here for a second. Then Jaden Daniels, some rumors saying he doesn't want to play in cold weather. Played at Arizona State, then transferred to LSU. He came out, of course, said, that's not true, even though he may prefer to stay in a little bit of a warmer climate. He's been linked to Antonio Pierce and the Raiders. They're out in Las Vegas, but don't see unless they give up a haul somehow to trade up and get him there for Daniels. But when you look at Jaden Daniels, you brought up a good point, Jason, and that is the weapons around him. 2 of the guys that he was throwing to last year at LSU are going to be potentially top 20 picks in this year's draft. You look at Drake May, no offensive line, no great receivers there at North Carolina either. And then you look at Caleb Williams. He had Jordan Addison last year and was phenomenal. Absolutely no interceptions last year or this year on 3rd down or 4th down. Didn't turn the ball over. This year, his best receiver is Brendan Rice, who Jerry Rice's son, as we know, maybe a day 2 or day 3 guy. Offensive line was weak at USC too. So out of these 3 quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels by far was set up with the best situation. But we'll see how it unfolds in the pros between those 3 guys. Again, all of us up here are split on our number 1 quarterbacks, and it's going to be a fun Of course, gets you a little excited for the preseason coming up in August to see some of these guys take the field. That'll take us to pick number 4. So we got the first 3 mocked out at 4. It's the Arizona Cardinals, and this will be, to me, guys, my number 2 player on my big board and potentially could be the best player in the draft. That is Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State, unable to come out last year. Phenomenal with C.J. Stroud, the best receiver in the country. Just waiting for him to get through this year so he can enter the draft. McCord at Ohio State last year. A little bit of a difference between C.J. Stroud, who was phenomenal in his rookie season with the Houston Texans. So numbers down a little bit, and I think the recency bias has people a little bit not off of Marvin Harrison Jr., but forgetting the type of playmaker and wide receiver he is. He's going to be potentially maybe the best player in the draft. I think it's a no-brainer for Arizona at number 4. They need that guy. He's going to be, in my opinion, immediately a stud in the NFL out wide. What do you guys think about Marvin Harrison Jr. here at number 4 to the Cardinals?
That's who I have.
Yeah, if you don't pick him at 4, something's wrong.
Yeah.
And, Coach, when you watch Marvin Harrison on tape, anything stick out to you about the best pass catcher potentially in this class, in a loaded class of wide receivers?
Well, you said best pass catcher, and that's what I like. There's nobody better in this draft at contested passes. He's a tough guy. He can run over the middle. Kind of reminds me of Terry McLaurin in there from Washington. He is stretch potential down the field. He can make big plays. He has good physicality. He's got a great catch radius. And so all the things that you look for in a receiver, he's got it. And he's also a big-time playmaker. And I would count on him, in my feeling, to make a big play if you needed it. So I'm a big fan of Harrison.
I mean, Coach, you talk about genetics. I mean, who has better genetics than Marvin Harrison Jr.?
That's right.
And to say that with the physical tools, he might already be better than his dad. Just has to play a longer time in the NFL to get similar numbers. That's insane to think about, but that's what we're talking about right now with Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, he has the height, he has the speed, he has the catch radius. I mean, the only thing we need to see him do probably in the NFL is how does he do in pass protection with run blocking and pass blocking. But other than that, he's a total package you want at the wide receiver position.
Again, I won't hold it against him that I waited for him at the Combine. He was a no-show. Didn't appear at any of the interviews or workouts.
He didn't know you were waiting for him.
I won't hold it against you, Marvin. You're still going to be number 2 on my big board. Marvin Harrison Jr. got him 4 to the Arizona Cardinals. And that takes us to number 5, where a lot are expecting the draft to actually begin here at number 5 with the L.A. Chargers. So we got the 3 quarterbacks. We got Marvin Harrison Jr. Yep. Those 4 most likely going to be the first 4 guys off the board, almost definitively. So for the Chargers, you got Jim Harbaugh coming in off a national championship at Michigan. If you know Jim Harbaugh, loves the offensive line, loves that run game. Chargers, though, in desperate need of a wide receiver, right? Mike Williams gone. Keenan Allen gone. I'm not sure if we can even come up with a few receivers that the Chargers have on the roster. Should they take a receiver here? You could make that argument. I, on my big board, do have a wide receiver, Rome Odunze, at number 5, but that's not going to be for the mock guys. I'm new to Jim Harbaugh and people talking around the league. They say he's not going to change that now. There's no reason to. I got him taking Joe Alt, the offensive tackle out of Notre Dame here at number 5, 6'7", 322. His dad played for the Chiefs in the NFL, a former tight end. He's agile, he's strong, he's quick for that size. The best offensive tackle in the draft. You could argue maybe they need a receiver here for the Chargers. They have Rashawn Slater, who batted some of those injuries last year, but I'm going to go with what I think Jim Harbaugh wants to do, and that is build that offensive line. I think he takes the best offensive tackle here. Me personally, maybe I look at Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors, but Joe Alt going to be the pick I have here for the Chargers. Which way would you guys go if you were LA? I'm
taking Alt as well. I think when you bring in a Harbaugh, you bring in a Greg Roman, and you bring in through free agency, you bring in Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Running the ball is going to be the primary focus to take the pressure off of Herbert. I think he can throw to anybody, really, if you give him a decent offensive line and some decent backs. So I think Joe Alt will alleviate a lot of the pressure that he's faced the last couple of years. I mean, with the hand injury and other things that have happened, I think on that blind side, just making the line better in general. And then, like I said, with Roman, he's going to run the balls, heavy play action. I think Alt is the guy, another son of an NFL player.
Good genetics again here in this draft.
So I do think that Alt is the right pick. Yeah, you want to make a splash, you'll take Odunze, but if you want to make the correct pick for your team, the correct pick would be Joe Alt.
And again, I could maybe see them trading back as well here from number 5. A lot of great offensive tackles in that middle of the first round. Maybe they like one of those guys almost as much as they like Joe Alt. Maybe they could retain some more picks and move back a few spots there with the Chargers. Coach, what do you think about LA Chargers? Jim Harbaugh's kind of methodology to what he likes to do. What do you see them doing at 5?
Well, I'm not going to try to ever outthink Harbaugh. Especially after that those tattoos he got the other day.
Oh, that's
fulfilling
right.
His bet. But whether
What
he
would you do, I guess I should say?
Well, I think a little bit depends on what the Giants do or what the Cardinals do at 4
Yeah.
and all that. But you guys want to talk about Joe Alt. I would love him on my team.
Yeah,
I love
knew you
offensive
would.
linemen, as you know. I mean, great size, great technique, great pedigree, as we've already talked about. I watched him a lot on tape, and he has just fantastic balance. He's a great knee bender, and that's what you need to do. He is smart. He's got every aspect you would want for a player that's going to be around. I look at him like Joe Thomas of the Browns for all
That's
those
a great
years.
comparison.
He's consistent. He's just got what it takes, and I could see him being a great pick at wherever he goes. I mean, if he was available to me, I would definitely pick him. No matter who my left tackle was, you could always work him in right until you have to move over to left.
Yeah.
And these guys now in the NFL, especially if you look at the Eagles with Martin Frank talking about them, guys like Stoutland, these offensive line coaches, they want versatility. They want to be able to have guys move back and forth, and he could easily do that, but he certainly, to me, is a fantastic left tackle of the future for someone.
And he has very strong hands. I don't think people underestimate how strong his hands are when he's in protection. Like I think the correct pick would be if you're trying to establish like your running game, I think that's the pick you go with.
And we all know that's what Harbaugh
Matt's
likes
face
to
says
do
otherwise.
there. Matt, if you were Harbaugh in the Chargers, maybe you're looking skill position?
I mean, look, Alt's the right pick. I'm never going to hate on Alt. Alt's a tremendous talent at tackle. But Quentin Johnston, Simi Faco, Joshua Palmer, Darius Davis. I mean, you got Malik Neighbors, you got Romeo Odunze. I mean, we're talking top 10 talent. I don't know.
I wouldn't
and
hate
look, and Alt's a top 10 talent too. Don't get me wrong, but I think when you have so we just saw the best quarterback of what we could say in this generation. He's fighting to be the best of all time. We saw how he struggled with the Chiefs wideouts. I don't care who your tackle is. If you don't have anybody that you can throw to, you're going to be in trouble. And as much as we could talk about, like, Will Dissly's their tight end, so that's not any relief there. Hayden Hurst is their second tight end. I like Hayden Hurst, but, I mean, look.
Injury-prone.
They've got injury-prone J.K. Dobbins. They've got injury-prone Gus Edwards. They got injury-prone Isaiah Spiller at running back. I'm just saying, at some point, he can sit there and tell me all he wants what he usually does. And, look, again, I'm not going to second-guess a guy that's that good. But if I'm looking at the roster and what I'm looking at, it's like, what is my guy going to throw to? Look, and I like Joshua Palmer. I think he's a good talent. But like, I'm taking Neighbors or I'm taking Odunze.
I don't hate it.
So if we're going to go need, I mean, both are needs, O-line and wide receiver.
Sure.
I actually like Neighbors better in that.
Yeah, that's why I'm
offense
going. That's why I'm going.
Than Odunze.
Yeah.
And again, might as well focus on the receivers now for the sake of the mock. We'll have Joe Alt going 5 to the Chargers from what I see. But I'm with you. So for me, guys, I've been on Rome Odunze since the college football season. I have him as my number 1 ranked wide receiver. I know Neighbors is the consensus number 1. I like Odunze just a little bit better. 6'3", 215 pounds. He's silky smooth out there. One of the best at 50-50 balls in the country, alongside Marvin Harrison Jr. Tremendous hands, body control. I just think he is the better overall receiver. Malik Neighbors, 6 foot, 200 pounds out of LSU. Obviously the most explosive player in the draft. The best, with the ball in his hands, yards after the catch. Like I said, tough guy. He can take the top off the defense. And once he gets the ball in his hands, I think he may be the most dynamic player in the class. I think Odunze is the most complete wide receiver outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. in the class. I have him number 2 wide receiver, number 5 on my big board. Neighbors at number 6 on my big board. And that takes us to the New York Giants. We talk about the receivers. A lot of people have mocked some of these guys you're seeing on your screen, Odunze or Neighbors, to the Giants. A lot of word this week is talk about trading up even, or if they're able to stay put and get J.J. McCarthy. So that's our first time we brought up J.J. McCarthy here on the show tonight ahead of Thursday's draft. He has gone anywhere in everything we've read or seen in the last couple of weeks. We've seen him at 20, towards the end of the first round, and we've seen him as high as number 4 overall with a trade up coming into this week. So it's all over the place. I don't know what to make of J.J. McCarthy. I don't have him with a high first-round grade on my board. I've got him on the big board in the 20s. I wouldn't take him that early. It seems like the Giants wouldn't make that move. I know Daniel Jones has been off 2 injuries. They don't have a lot of weapons. I mean, the guys that, and again, I'm not a Daniel Jones fan, but the guys that they were throwing out there at skill positions for the Giants the last few years, I mean, it's been kind of insane, the depth they've had at wide receiver going forward, probably the worst in the league. So I'm not making an argument to take J.J. McCarthy here, but I would take, of course, a receiver, wherever they have as their number 1 ranked receiver off the board here at 6. But there are some rumors that they trade up for McCarthy. What do you guys think? The Giants need a quarterback, or do they take a receiver?
They need a quarterback, but with this at this position, I'm taking a wide out, and I'll try to trade back in and grab me a Nix or grab me a Penix.
Yeah, and that's definitely
or grab
been
me a
discussion.
McCarthy. That if I'm the Giants, that's what I'm doing. Because again, history teaches you if you reach too long into that bag to pull that talent, that QB, it bites you more than it helps you. And Daniel Jones is, look, I'm not trying to pile on Daniel Jones. He's inconsistent. I think that's the right word. But look, I'm not taking. Didn't they take Daniel Jones like 6 or 7? Yeah,
6 overall. Yeah.
And he didn't have a top 10 grade on him either. He was another one of those guys that got picked because of the position he played. I just don't know if you make that same mistake twice if you're the Giants. They have to start learning here how the draft works. And I just think you take BPA, best player available. That's going to be a wide out, probably either Neighbors or a Dunze, depending on who's left on the board. And then I would trade back in and try to get Penix, Nix, or McCarthy later on.
And Coach, have you had a chance to check out the Giants at all with your work on Sundays last year?
We
what do you
did
think of
them.
them?
We did them a lot, and it was scary. But whoever they pick, personally, I think as much as I like the winner aspect of J.J. McCarthy, I think he's a little overvalued if they were going to trade up, whether it be at 4 or 6. I think he's probably more a mid-pack guy.
Yep.
He's a winner. He benefited from a terrific offensive line, a great defense, a great coaching staff, and a tremendous run game. He's very good in the execution of the pass plays, but he, I think, needs to mature in the pocket. He doesn't have as much volume to his tape, but I do like him. He's a winner, and I think those aspects, you can never overrule that, but I just think it would be a stretch at that part. He's a great play-action executor, too. He can move around the pocket. He's a tough guy as well. Plays in bad weather, which you have to do at some point, especially if you're with the New York Giants and being outside. But I think it would be a little bit of a stretch to me, though I think he's going to be a very good player down the road for someone.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy how far he has jumped in this draft process, making in some mocks in his way into the top 5 for J.J. McCarthy. So we'll see what happens with J.J. McCarthy going forward. It could be anywhere, wide range of possible results for J.J. McCarthy, and it could be as high as number 6 to the New York Giants. But we'll have to wait and see on Thursday here. We got him taking a wide receiver, Neighbors or Odunze. Neighbors has been the kind of consensus there for the Giants, but we'll see what Coach Brian Daboll decides to do. That takes us to number 7, and the Tennessee Titans going through kind of a change here, right? No Mike Vrabel anymore. He's been relieved of his duties as head coach of Tennessee. Derrick Henry, the longtime kind of focal point of that offense, no longer there as well. They struggled with some of these pass catchers in the past, taking Treylon Burks in that first round after trading A.J. Brown. They wanted him to kind of be that replacement with that pick. Hasn't happened quite yet for the Tennessee Titans. They have glaring needs up front on the offensive line as well as out wide at wide receiver, of course on that defensive front as well. Where do the Titans go here? If we've seen a lot of maybe Joe Alt slipping down to number 7, but if he goes 5 to the Chargers, I think the Titans got to take out whatever receiver the Giants don't here. They need desperately any type of playmaker on that offense, especially for a young guy like Will Levis.
I haven't taken Alt. That's where I haven't taken. But
if he's available.
If he's available,
Yeah.
correct.
And
If
you
he's not available, I mean, I could see maybe J.C. Latham or Lou from Penn State. I think that's decent value. I mean, look, the offensive line is in tatters. I mean, they've been trying to patch it for a couple years now. I think Treylon Burks still is intriguing. He's been very inconsistent, but I still like his physical profile. I think he's a really physical, talented wideout, and we still don't know what we have in Will Levis, really. And they also have Hayden Hooker, who I was a big fan of previously. So I'm interested to see what happens with them.
Tennessee Titans going to be interesting.
I would just like to add one thing there. In case he does go 7th, the Titans added Bill Callahan, who's one of the all-time great offensive line coaches. So I think that mesh of Alt and Callahan would be a great fit. Now, we don't know if he's going to go early, but my feeling is I agree with you. I think that's a great spot for him at 7. I think that's good value. It's a need for the Titans, and if it's a marriage of he and Callahan, I think that could be a big long-term left tackle for 15 years.
Yeah, I'm thinking offensive line or wide receiver has to be one of those two for Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm thinking this is where J.C. Latham gets selected.
Oh,
Tennessee. Yeah.
J.C. Latham, again, on this offensive tackle class, a lot of differences in these rankings coming up, so it's going to be fun to see how they land on Thursday. Number 8 to the Atlanta Falcons. They need an edge rusher. If I've seen one consensus pick throughout this entire draft process, it has been Dallas Turner to the Atlanta Falcons. It's almost been every single mock, every single person you talk to, it's Dallas Turner, Dallas Turner. Coming in off the year, obviously the edge rusher for Alabama, was opposite Will Anderson last year, and kind of when you watch Will Anderson, he was the lead dog last year. He kind of followed him behind him, so it's hard to kind of get a gauge, but this was his first year first year being the star on the outside for Alabama. I thought he looked pretty good. His numbers, though, is really what projected him up here. He measured in at 6'4", 240, and ran a 4.46. So coming off the edge, he has an unbelievable first step, very quick off the edge, good bend, 10 sacks last year. He was 8th in the FBS in pressure rate. Again, you look back, I don't think he's Will Anderson good necessarily as last year, but you look at this class, I think he's going to be the top or one of the top 2 pass rushers here, and I've got him going 8 to Atlanta. That's kind of been everyone's has it so far, and that's kind of what they need, so I'm going to pencil it in. I think he's the best pass rusher in this class.
I'm going to surprise you. I actually think they should take a QB here. I would take McCarthy. I think is a great fit. I mean, they got Cousins there. Cousins can kind of mentor him, help him with these shortcomings, and have him learn the game. Penix is there. Because, I mean, Kirk Cousins, he's patchwork. I mean, he's going to be there a year or two, and they're going to need to find a replacement. I think you kind of lean on what Green Bay has been able to do, where you have that vet and you get that young upcoming guy who can kind of study under and get some of that mentoring. And you know, we talk about numbers. QBs who sit and learn, they do a great job in return. So I think this would be great for Atlanta if they get a McCarthy or a Penix. I think this is great value for them long term.
I don't see him making that move, but as Matt said, I've seen it. A few people bring it up this week. I've even seen Penix take an 8 to Atlanta. The Falcons seem to maybe like Michael Penix. I don't see it happening personally, but there's a couple people that have put that down as what they think will happen this week. So maybe they sign Kirk Cousins and get somebody for him to mentor there at number 8. A.J. Terrell entering the final year of his contract. They were last in the NFL in pressure rate last season. So I have him going with Dallas Turner, or what do you think, Coach?
I love Turner. You already mentioned the little things that I would have said. He's just got a tremendous burst. He can run the bend as well as anybody in college football, and I think he would be an excellent choice for a team that needs a lot. I don't disagree with you about your quarterback scenario, but I think Turner is a guy that really can change the dynamic of the front.
6'4", 240, running a 4.46. When he ran that at the combine, everybody just kind of looked at each other, did not expect that type of speed out of Dallas Turner, and that's why he finds himself in the top 10, sitting there at 8 to Atlanta. So now to the Chicago Bears at 9, guys. They have 2 picks in the top 10, so they get Caleb at number 1, and now you look at number 9. It's either, in my opinion, offensive line or wide receiver. If I was running the show here for Chicago, guys, maybe you trade out of 9 if you like a defensive player or another offensive tackle because of that depth, but I stay right here and I take a receiver if Odunze or Neighbors are there, depending on what the Titans and them do. I would love to see Odunze head to Chicago with Caleb Williams at 1 and 9. That's what I think. That I think would be the most fun. That's what I'm rooting for the Chicago Bears. So whoever, Neighbors, Odunze, whoever's there, I think that's who they should take there at number 9, but a lot of offensive tackle talk has been circulating in Chicago as well, and they'll have a plethora of options in that regard as well on Thursday.
I think they take Fautanu from Washington.
Troy Fautanu. Hey, I love Troy Fautanu, and again, he played left tackle at Washington. last season. 6'4", 317, 114 snaps over the last 3 seasons at left tackle. Talking to a lot of people in the NFL, they want to see him, or not want to see him, but most likely see him playing guard. I think he can still play tackle, but if you slide him in at guard, I think he would be a fantastic guard. Excellent feet, strong hands. The versatility that Coach talked about, he is kind of the poster child for that. He can do both, in my opinion. I love what he was able to do for Michael Penix Jr. last year. I think they gave up 1 or 2 sacks all season on that sideline of scrimmage. So Troy Fautanu for me is number 9 on my big board. I have him as the number 2 offensive lineman behind Joe Alt. That's how I feel about the man from Washington.
Yeah, so I have him going at 9 to Chicago because, again, we know that all the things that they did not do for Justin Fields, again, they have to do it for Caleb Williams. So you have to build a strong line. I think you've addressed these skilled players very aggressively in free agency prior to the draft. And I think that Chicago will probably take another receiver maybe in the 2nd or 3rd round because the draft is so deep. I don't think you need another first-round wide receiver right now.
Maybe trade back.
Yeah. But I think that the pool of wide receivers is so deep in this draft, I feel like you can get a first-round talent maybe in the 2nd round. So I think that's probably what they'll do. But there's a premium on offensive linemen, especially with the way they need that offense to work. Year 1, I think the jury's still out on Eberflus, so I think that you have to draft a little lineman there at 9.
Matthew, you get Caleb at number 1. You're sitting at number 9. What do you think would be the best case for Chicago here?
I mean, it really comes down to, what they perceive as their biggest weakness.
BPA?
If I'm going BPA, I would love them to take Bowers here. I mean, that gives them another tight end weapon with Cole Kmet. I like what they did with Darnell Wright. I like what they did with Braxton Jones at offensive line. Had some growing pains. They're still in the bottom of offensive lines. So, again, I think some of that, it just depends on what they perceive Caleb Williams to be. Do they think he's going to be more of a guy that can create better out of the pocket than Justin Fields? Maybe you say, I'll take the tight end. But to me, if I had this pick, I'd probably go offensive line just because, to me, the Bears, they have to start addressing this, and they have to start getting it right. I just think it's going to be damaging for them long term.
Jason and Matthew going with offensive tackle there. What would you do, Coach, for the Chicago Bears? What do you think their biggest need is?
I couldn't agree more with the tackle. I studied that offensive line, and they obviously struggled at times. They have some potential there, but they definitely need some more parts. And I don't care how good your quarterback is. I don't care how well he escapes. You saw what happened to Fields. If teams are smart and keep a passer in the pocket and you make him throw over long arms and then you get an edge rusher there, and if you don't have tackles to protect, I don't care how good he is, it's going to be a very tough assignment. So I would definitely agree with some sort of offensive player. There are a lot of good tackles. To me, they're almost cookie cutter after Alt. I think the 3 or 4 that to me are very similar. The player we're talking about here, he has great length. That's one thing I really like. Good feet and good balance. So why wouldn't that translate to playing for the Chicago Bears?
And as Coach mentioned, you got Troy Fautanu, Taliesa Fuaga from Oregon State, J.C. Latham, Alu Fashanu as well.
And I like them all. And I agree with your
agree.
ranking them. You could go from 2 to 5 and then flip them all around.
be good.
So you've done a good job of assimilating.
Working on those names I hear over there. It's all right.
Well, let's take us to number 10 in the New York Jets. A lot of scrutiny probably coming either way, whatever they decide to do here. Aaron Rodgers coming back from the Achilles. They go out and during the offseason, guys, they had Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses to kind of solidify that offensive line. The only issue, they're both 33 years old. So those are some older guys there. They do get Mike Williams. They add him to the receiving core. He, of course, though, is coming off a torn ACL.
He's going to play 3 games.
So they add 3 guys that you look down on paper and go, hey, they just got, a little bit better here in some much-needed positions. But you could also, on the flip side, see maybe those 3 signings not working out, depending, obviously, what comes up this year for the Jets. They're sitting at number 10, best available player here.
Tackle.
And again,
they go tackle again.
Could argue they could tackle. For me, it's number 8 on my big board, and that's Brock Bowers out of Georgia. Again, he's a capable run blocker, but he's an offensive weapon. Will tear you apart across the middle part of the field, down the seams. Sure hands, physical. They played him at running back the last couple years. They handed him the ball. He literally can do it all. I would take Brock Bowers here at 10 if I was the Jets. Again, number 8 on my big board. Of course, he's coming off that injury, but he did return. He looked good. Again, tight end is a position that not a lot of people like with those premium picks up top near the top of the draft, but I think he's more than that in terms of a weapon. I would like to see Brock Bowers with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, but I would no problem at all if they take one of those other 4 or 5 offensive linemen here.
Just want to play devil advocate.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not that I disagree with your selection here. Does it trouble you at all that Aaron Rodgers throughout his career has never really been great at feeding the tight end?
I think they need a weapon across the middle of the field. I think they lack a lot of pass-catching guys for Aaron Rodgers.
Sure.
I think, to me, it's not necessarily a part of the field I think that he doesn't use. I just think they need to improve there with Brock Bowers. He can do it all. What do you think, Coach? What do you think about that question in terms of Aaron Rodgers? Maybe not utilizing the tight end as much. Do you think that plays into what they might do at number 10?
Taylor Swift might not like me, but I think this guy could become the next Kelsey.
Yeah, there we go. That's what
I love his versatility. You can play him in the slot for matchups against linebackers and safeties. You can play him out at X or Z if you had to. You can put him in motion. You can shovel pass to him. I think he's a tremendous talent. I'm not sure this is where he will go. I'm not going to argue with that because I think offensive lineman would be a great choice for the Jets. But if you didn't want that, why not Brock Bowers? I think he is one of the best potential players upside in the draft. I love his versatility, and he's a winner as well. Comes from a great program, of course.
Absolutely. And you talk about all those 4 offensive tackles could go either way. And again, I wouldn't have a problem with either of it. I would think it'd be more fun if they got Brock Bowers. But again, as you guys know, I'm a big offensive line guy, and it all starts in the trenches, so no issues there as well. What do you guys think about the Jets at number 10?
I think Brock Bowers is the pick as well. I think with an even older Aaron Rodgers, I think he has to get the ball out even faster. And I think that would exploit the need to have a tight end. You have to need someone who can catch the intermediate routes and turn them into bigger gains downfield. So if you're looking for something like that, to get the ball in Aaron Rodgers' hands, he's not holding the ball around or moving around in the pocket, waiting for people to get open. I think you take Brock Bowers, that eliminates the issue with that and the propensity for him maybe having another injury, because at his age now, any hit can really do it, which is why I was apprehensive about them trading for him in the first place. But I do think Brock Bowers would be the safety valve that he would need. And I also agree with the coach where, the next he has Kelsey-esque qualities. I see it 100%.
That'll take us to number 11 and the Minnesota Vikings. So Minnesota's sitting at 11-23. They've been the team discussed all for the last couple of weeks about trading up for a quarterback. It's been all quarterback talk in Minnesota, and they're not necessarily hiding it either. So we'll see what they decide to do, whether they stay put at 11. To me, I think J.J. McCarthy should be there at 11. Again, that may not be the case considering what everybody's talking about. For me personally, I don't think he should be ahead of 11. 11 for me is a stretch. I got him in the 20s on my big board in terms of overall players. But Minnesota, they need a quarterback. They've been linked to him a little bit, and if they can't trade up, it wouldn't shock me if they stay put at 11 and take him. And again, you can make the argument that Minnesota has the best situation of all for any incoming quarterback to Minnesota with the weapons and the offensive line that they have there with the Vikings. So I've got J.J. McCarthy going here. They're going to try to trade up. We'll see if they can do it. But if they stay put, and again, we're not forecasting any trades in this edition, I'm going to say J.J. McCarthy, 11 to the Vikings.
I couldn't agree with you. I'm sorry. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's a perfect fit. It still might be a little bit of an overreach, but Kevin O'Connell does a great job developing quarterbacks. I think McCarthy would be an excellent fit here, even though, as I said, it might be a slight stretch, considering I think he's more of a 16 to 20. But I wouldn't quibble with a choice of McCarthy to Minnesota. Excuse me, Jason.
If they don't go J.J. McCarthy, guys, what do you think of Minnesota?
I'm going to go with the quarterback who I think is the most pro-ready. It's going to be a stretch for most. But I think at 11, they might end up drafting Bo Nix.
Oh, Bo Nix. I was waiting for you to say Michael Penix.
I think they might draft Bo Nix.
Bo Nix, it could be. And speaking of Bo Nix, you look at number 12, and the Denver Broncos could potentially be another quarterback spot, right, for Sean Payton, who needs one. Russell Wilson is out of there. And, of course, the talk for Denver the past couple of weeks were, Sean Payton loves Jarrett Stidham. He loves Jarrett Stidham. Jarrett Stidham's going to be the starter for Denver this year. That's okay. So that makes you think they're going after a quarterback here in the draft. I don't buy that for a second that he wants to go into next season with Jarrett Stidham. Will it be Bo Nix? It's been Bo Nix will fit Sean Payton's offense. Bo Nix to Denver, et cetera, whether that be here at 12 or trading back into the late first round or early second round to get him. A lot of different grades from different guys on Bo Nix. I have Bo Nix behind Penix and right there with McCarthy for me in my quarterback rankings. 61 starts for Bo Nix. It's a college record. A lot of playing time. Obviously started at Auburn, went to Oregon with that quick pass RPO offense. Had a phenomenal year this year over there in Eugene. What do you guys think of the Denver Broncos at 12? I think it may be too rich here to take one of these quarterbacks at number 12 for Denver, but it wouldn't shock me if they do. What do you think the Broncos should do at 12?
Well, definitely should get a quarterback. I have Penix going to Minnesota. I think he fits better with what Justin Jefferson's skill set is. Then I would say McCarthy probably would be my pick for Denver. I think he's got a little bit of that Drew Brees type thing that Sean Payton likes. He can work with great mechanics, decent arm, not the strongest, but decent arm. And look, he can coach him up, coach him through with some of the things that he's missing. I don't know. For me, I think the biggest problem that Minnesota is going to have, unfortunately, being in the position they're in, is really there's no win. Because Michael Penix, all these guys, well, all quarterbacks have warts, but these three in particular, Bo Nix, McCarthy, and Penix, they all have their warts, and these warts are pretty big. So, with Bo Nix, he's probably limited upside. McCarthy, to me, has all upside. And then, Penix probably has the best arm, but you don't know about his durability. He's been a guy that's been injured a lot in his career, so all these guys have warts. So unfortunately for Minnesota, this could be a situation where they trade up to try to move up and get somebody else, or they just sit there. But I think they're going to have to take a QB. It just really depends on their due diligence on their evaluations on what they're going to take.
And again, you look at it, for me, I got McCarthy and Penix in the 20s on my big board. I think it's a little rich to take a quarterback here at 12, but if they decided to do so, I think the guy for me would be Michael Penix. And, just the rumors around, you had Adam Schefter come on this morning, and he talked about all the medicals for this year's draft, and one of the guys that were the focal points in terms of, medical, how's it going to look, was Michael Penix. And he said everything has been fantastic, all clear, not a team is worried about the medical, which is very surprising to me coming in, because that was supposed to be the big talk. 2 torn ACLs and a shoulder injury at Indiana for 3 years, from 18 to 21, so that was kind of where the worry came in, but was healthy last year, a little bit banged up towards the end of the year. But the medicals seem to be good for Penix. He's battled through adversity. 4,900 yards, was the Heisman runner-up this year. And then, of course, people didn't expect him to do some of the drills at his pro day. He came out and jumped to 36.5 vertical and ran a 4.46 40 that blew everybody out of the water. Nobody saw that coming. The issue with him is, can he extend the plays, right? Can he move out of the pocket? He's got good pocket awareness, in my opinion. He can definitely make people miss in the pocket. He can step up. He's elusive there, but extending the play is not going to be, his area of expertise. So he has to go maybe to a place with a strong offensive line that can give him time to throw, like he had at Washington this past year. But Coach, when looking at Michael Penix Jr., the ball explodes off of his hand. It's almost in terms of throwing ability, like to me, Michael Vick, the lefty from Virginia Tech, he flings it, and that thing is like a rocket out of his left arm. Your thoughts on Penix?
He's got a great pro body. He gets the ball out very quickly. He did a great job in the offense up at Washington, and albeit in a conference that allows you to do that. My feeling would be twofold. Number one, I still worry about injuries. He has a history, as it's been chronicled. That would worry me. I just couldn't spend that kind of money.
That's why I was so surprised to hear that.
And number two, I think he's a really good college quarterback, and I'm not sure it all translates for him to the pros, especially here in the upper regions of the first round.
If I had to ask you, put you on the spot here, Coach, if you had to rank Nix, Penix, and McCarthy, just those three, who would you have as the top-ranked quarterback out of those
McCarthy.
Three? McCarthy, Nix, Penix? McCarthy, Penix, Nix. There you have it there from Coach, his quarterback rankings.
Again, you're kind of throwing it. To me, they're all very close, but I don't have them, in my humble opinion, as close to the other three that we talked about. I think there's not a massive divide, but a significant divide. But I think the guy that can develop the most ultimately is McCarthy, even though I know Nix and Penix have some real great skill sets. But again, I think they're better college quarterbacks without as much pro upside, to me.
And we'll see what Denver decides to do, if they trade back, trade up maybe from the second round, or what they decide to stay put and do at number 12. Vikings 11, Denver at 12. Interesting, very interesting to figure out what they decide to do on Thursday. That takes us to the Raiders at number 13. A lot of talk about them moving up to try to get Jaden Daniels. Don't see that happening at all. Don't know how it would be possible of happening. So they'll stay here at 13. And for me, it's going to be a player that I have in the top 10 on my big board if he somehow gets here, and I think he will. And that's going to be Terrion Arnold, the cornerback from Alabama. There's just so much to love about Arnold. 6 foot, 189 pounds. Came in playing safety for Nick Saban. Converted him to corner. Was an All-American his freshman year. Started 21 games, 6 interceptions, 20 breakups. Quarterbacks completed only a 43% completion when he was the nearest defender. Allowed just 4 catches over 20 yards all of last year. The 40 is what has him knocked down. I don't think anybody was expecting him to be in the 4.3, 4.4s, but he ran a 4.52. To me, I don't take too much from that. I'm not a big 40 guy in terms of that, but I think 4.52 is fine for a corner. I think he'll be absolutely fine as my number 1 corner, and I have him again in the top 10 on my big board. I've got him to Las Vegas here at number 13. You guys like that pick for a corner? Do you see the Raiders going elsewhere?
Well, 4.5 is the reason why he was a safety coming out of high school. That's to be honest about it, most safeties, that's a safety range of speed for 40. But I don't have him going here at 13 either. This is where I have J.J. McCarthy going.
Las Vegas. I apologize.
Yeah, I have J.J. McCarthy going at 13. You need a quarterback. This is where I have him going.
Again, you look at that Aiden O'Connell, and who's now? They have one more quarterback over there in Las Vegas. It's slipping. Mario is in Washington. Excuse me, I apologize, everyone at home. I'm not sure the other quarterback there on the Raiders, but they certainly need one. Matty, what do you think Las Vegas should do?
Gardner Minshew.
That's right, Gardner Minshew. Thank you. That's correct. Thank you.
I actually got a cornerback. I got Toledo's.
That's right. Yeah,
Quinyon
Mitchell guy.
Whoever I think is going to be the best cornerback in this draft. I just like his build. I like his speed. I agree and disagree about the 40-yard dash. I think it's overrated in a lot of ways, but I think the lateral movement is the most important aspect and the stop and start for cornerbacks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's just. I think he's going to be a problem at the next level, and cornerback is one of those positions where no matter where you play, if you can stick guys and you can defend guys, it seems to be more translatable at the next level than probably just about any other position, really, because you have those core tangibles like the speed, being able to have your length, your athleticism. So those type of things usually translate really well at the next level. So yeah, that's who I have there. But again, I'm with you. I think Arnold is tremendous. He's probably my number 2. So either way, you win at the cornerback slot. I think Arnold's going to be a very good pro.
Coach Las Vegas, what do they got to do?
Well, I don't know what they have to do, but if they go with Arnold, I really like him. I like him a little bit more than Mitchell because he's younger. He can play a little bit better press technique. He played at Alabama versus Toledo, even though Mitchell was a big-time playmaker for them, and Mitchell probably has a little bit more upside because of his special teams aspect. But I would still probably take Arnold slightly over Mitchell. But either one, I think, again, you get some of these players, to me, they don't differentiate themselves that much from one another. They're all very good. I think Arnold, I just like his competitiveness. He's got great hip mobility. That's where I would go. And
that's why they call it one of the most unpredictable drafts of all time.
I think Wiggins is close to them, too.
Yeah, anyway, lightning fast. I think he ran a 4.22 or 4.23.
Yeah, I'd actually put them in their own tier together. I agree with Coach on that. There's not a lot of separation between those guys.
I would enjoy coaching them both, let's put it that way.
And Terrion Arnold, one of my favorite guys at the draft. He's one of my favorite players in the draft. Again, the way that everybody rallied around him, he kind of controlled the room. He was the leader of all those guys at the Combine. I think he's a very special player for whoever's able to get him there in this upcoming draft. To New Orleans at number 14. Offensive lineman, been the talk there for the Saints. Another year where they almost went 500 and made the playoffs there in the NFC South. But production, especially up front. And then if you look at the defensive front, in terms of Cameron Jordan, production way down last year. He didn't have a lot of pressure wins for New Orleans. So you can go, it's going to be maybe in the trenches here, offensive line or defensive line for New Orleans. I've got an offensive tackle here for the Saints, whatever one they're feeling here. Maybe Taliesa Fuaga, who I think maybe could go earlier, the tackle from Oregon State. He's number 12 on my big board, but you guys see the Saints going offensive line here?
I think so. I mean, Trevor Penning, who they took in the first round from Northern Iowa, he's been a train wreck for them. So, I mean, unfortunately he's been a bad pick. So, I think they're going to have to fortify that O-line, and I think that's a good pick, especially in this part of the draft. I mean, I guess the only edge guy that I would probably like if he did fall would be Dallas Turner, but I think he'll be gone by then. Yeah. So, I would go with the gentleman we just named.
Either Fuaga, an offensive tackle. I wouldn't mind seeing Jared Verse, the defensive end from Florida State. I think he's a pretty good rusher off the edge. Started his career at Albany, then transferred to Florida State. It's been phenomenal there for 2 years. What do you think about the Saints, Juice?
I think the pick should be Fuaga, because you got to keep Derek Carr upright.
Yep.
And every team he's been on, he's always been a guy that has needed a strong offensive line for him to be at his best version of himself. So I think offensive line is the way to go. And I think Fuaga, when you say he only allowed 1 sack over the past 2 seasons, I mean, you cannot put a premium on that type of pass protection.
Yep.
He's been fantastic. Again, who knows what order these tackles and guys up front are going to go for the offensive line. Number 15, the Indianapolis Colts. The rumors are they've thought about maybe trading down, trading up. They're sitting here at 15, though, as we go through it now. A DB, wide receiver, an edge rusher. For me, if Terran Arnold's off the board, I've got them taking Matthew's guy, and that is, of course, Quinyon Mitchell if he's there at Toledo. So him or Arnold, whatever is there at corner for Indy, that's the way I think they go on Thursday night.
I have Jared Verse going here.
Pass rusher?
Pass rusher.
I've got Blair Thomas.
I was like, well, we're going.
I'd say no. Serious. I got Brian Thomas. I'm joking.
And just because you said that before we get Coach's opinion here,
Yep.
Brian Thomas is my sleeper of the draft. I love Brian Thomas. To me, I think Brian Thomas is right behind Malik Neighbors. I think they are arguably. I don't want to say he could be bad. It's very close for me. I was watching Brian Thomas, 17 touchdowns last year. He led college football. He reminds me, he's got the Jalen Waddle factor from what I've seen him. I think I'm a big fan. I've got him right with Malik Neighbors, both of those guys from LSU. I know that's not a popular opinion. That's how I feel about Brian Thomas Jr. They can line up inside and outside, a large frame. He's big, athletic, fast. I love what I've seen out of Brian Thomas Jr. just because you brought up the name there.
Yeah.
But, Coach, we'll go over to you just to talk a little bit about,
Which one?
as we were talking about,
Mitchell?
With the Colts. Have you had a chance to do any of Indy's games last year? That's where the Combine was, so Chris Ballard and company had a good seat for all of those drills. What do you see, Indy, or what do you think?
Well, let's talk about the 2 you just talked
absolutely.
about. I really like Mitchell quite a bit. He's a big-time playmaker. I believe he had 46 pass breakups, though he did not have a pick last year, I don't believe. But he's a great special teams player. He's got good speed. He's explosive. Now, you go to Brian Thomas, who I think has an awful lot of upside. He's a great route runner, catch the ball over the middle. You can play him in the slot and out at the wide receiver. I like his versatility. Obviously, he has big-time speed over the top, and he had a great player throwing it to him. So I think Thomas or Mitchell would be very fine picks here. Both would be needs for the team.
I think both of those guys could be there as well for Indianapolis. Maybe if Brock Bowers slips to Indy. I've heard they've been infatuated with the tight end from Georgia, so if that were to happen, maybe they take him. But again, so many different things could happen come Thursday. 16, the Seattle Seahawks. They hired Ryan Grubb and Scott Huff from Washington. So they get Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator. They get Scott Huff, the offensive line coach. Both of those guys going to Seattle. Will that have any effect on what they decide to do? Obviously, Ryan Grubb, a big Michael Penix fan. He ran that offense with Penix last year at Washington. They love Troy Fautanu, the tackle from Washington. I don't see him being there at 16. If he was, I think that'd be a pretty quick pick for Seattle. Obviously, they need a quarterback in some situation. Word are, though, they aren't going to take one. They're not really known for taking a quarterback in the first couple of rounds. Schneider and company there in Seattle, so I don't see it happening. Rumors out of Seattle say they are high on Sam Howell. They really like Sam Howell, what he was able to do last year with Washington. Could that be a smokescreen to take a quarterback here at 16? I don't know, but they haven't taken a quarterback in round 1 since 1993. For the Seattle Seahawks. They could go a couple different ways. I'm going to go
Maurer?
offensive
Wow,
line. Yeah, offensive line or edge rusher.
Shout out to Rick Maurer.
Me for Seattle. I've got them taking Olu Fashanu, the tackle from Penn State here in the first round. Matt, I know you're a big fan of him.
Yeah. No, I think he's got some of the best physical gifts out of all the linemen. Probably doesn't have the technique and probably doesn't have all the fundamentals that a guy like Alt has, but I think he has some of the best physical tools among all the offensive linemen. So, yeah, I really like him. I don't have him getting down that far, but, yeah.
6'6", 312 for Alu. Coach, we had a chance to check him out up close and personal up at Penn State this year when the Blue Hens took on the Nittany Lions. Would have been a top 10 pick last year had he come out. He decided he wanted to grow in his game. Hasn't played a lot, right? Started just 21 career games. He's only 21 years old, so he went back to school. Has that size that Mac talked about. Former basketball player, but still developing. Your thoughts on Alu Fashanu?
I really like him as a player, and I love his age. That's a theme with me.
Yeah.
I like the younger players that you can develop, and then you have a couple extra years with them. So his body is great. He's got great arm length. He gets a little off balance at times. He isn't quite as good a knee bender as Alt is, but I think that's just youth, and he just needs to get a little bit stronger. You'll love, like you, his athleticism, being a basketball player, so he's a well-rounded athlete. I think he's going to develop into a good player. I don't want to call him a project, but he's probably not quite left tackle ready. Maybe they even try him at guard early on and then move him to tackle. But I think he's going to be a very fine player in the NFL.
I'm with you. You can see some of Alu on your screen now. That run game for Penn State was absolutely phenomenal, as we saw against the Delaware Blue Hens in that game. But again, Penn State got a lot of some other guys on the defensive side that you may see towards the end of round number 1, but Seattle could go a bunch of different ways. That takes us to Jacksonville. They lose Darius Williams in free agency. They've got nobody at corner here. It's number 17. They lose Calvin Ridley at wide receiver as well. For me, it's a no-brainer. It's going to be somebody in the secondary, Jason. What do you think?
For Jacksonville?
Yeah.
Cooper DeJean. So we have him. I've seen mock drafts where that's where he's projected. I think if he's there, I think you take him.
I like Cooper DeJean a lot. Was probably the most points scored for the Iowa team as a defender. He was the corner. He had a couple pick sixes. They tried to convert him to offense. That's when the injury happened. Broke his leg at practice in November playing offense for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Was a punt returner, averaged 25 points per game as a basketball player in high school. He's very versatile. He's fast. He put up huge numbers at his private workouts. Had one with the Eagles here not that long ago. You see Cooper DeJean. He's been clear talking about the combine. He is ready to go now. And again, he has that speed as well. Very versatile. A lot of the talk in the NFL is they want to move him to safety. I personally think he could stay at corner and play outside. I have no problem with that, but it seems like the consensus is they want to move him to safety so he can do either one. A lot of Eric Weddle, he said he models his game after Harrison Smith a little bit. So we'll see what he decides to do with that versatility. I think he can play corner or safety. I love Cooper DeJean. I have him 17th on my big board, and 17th to Jacksonville I think would be perfect. They're going to take a corner. We'll see if it's him because of the whole safety thing and what he can do there. But if they take a corner, to me, it should be Cooper DeJean.
What I love about DeJean is he's high character, he's very smart. You talk about versatility. I think we're going to see more and more players as defenses evolve where you've got to play corner, you've got to play safety, and you've got to play nickel. And that safety might actually involve being in the box as a hybrid linebacker or maybe deep in a deep cover 3. This guy has it, and he's also a very good special teams player, as you noted, and I love that versatility when you have those other aspects. It just finds a way you can get a player like that on the field early on in their career.
You know, I think he's a very good player in the secondary, and again, a big athlete there. I think would be perfect for Jacksonville.
Yeah, I don't have them taking a cornerback. I think their offensive line needs a lot of help. I don't think they were that good last year. I know PFF rated them, I want to say 25th out of the whole entire league. So I could see them taking, a Marius Mims from Georgia, or Graham Barton, who seems to have been flying up boards.
A lot of teams need centers here in the first round. Maybe get Graham Barton from Duke off the board.
I got to stress this because I think this is the one. I know offensive line isn't a sexy pick for people because we like the skill position.
We love offensive line here at this
Yeah, totally. But what's happened to Andrew Luck, you got to try to prevent with all future quarterbacks. And look, the Bengals, they got to do something too because. Look,
and we're about to get to them.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Take us right to Cincinnati at 18.
Yeah, I have them taking a different player. I have them taking Wiggins, but, look, they might reach for offensive line too because they're just as bad. It's rough out there. If you don't have an offensive line, you're just really putting a risk at your QB's, future. And I look.
Trevor Lawrence banged up last year.
Correct.
Pass as well.
And Burrow has not been the greatest health specimen
That's very true.
So, yeah, I think both these teams need to take an offensive lineman. That's just me. But
And sticking with Cincinnati at 18, I think they need help, obviously, up front as well on the offensive line. But for me, interior defensive line, I'm going to go with the best interior defensive lineman, in my opinion, in the class, and that's Byron Murphy from Texas. You may see two defensive tackles go in Newton from Illinois as well. I like Murphy just a little bit more. Murphy the third. If you watch him on tape, explosive first step, 6'1", 207, 33 quarterback pressures from that defensive tackle position. That's 19 more than he had last year, so he's getting better. 5 sacks, quick, powerful, a little bit lacking in the height department, but I think with that power and the way he's able to get, stop in the run game as well as get to the quarterback, I think he's a force in the middle. I think it's something that Cincinnati needs, and I think he'd be a great pick to find himself if he's there to the Bengals at 18.
I couldn't agree with you more. He's got a great twitch, and you talk about only 6 feet, but that gives him great leverage to work underneath. He's got really good feet, and a term that's thrown around all the time now by all the pundits you see on TV. They call it the suddenness, but it's very true about this guy. He just got that twitch. He's got that quick hand placement. He's very mobile in there. He can play the 1 or the 3 technique. I think he'd be a great pick.
And see if he's there. Could be the first defensive tackle off the board again. Offensive heavy draft. We'll see if some of these defenders start to come off now that we're in the middle of the first round. That takes us to 19 in Los Angeles Rams. A lot of talk with the Rams here. We'll move past it quickly, though, on Bo Nix. So if you know the GM, Les Snead, was at Auburn when Bo Nix's dad was at Auburn. They've been linked to Bo Nix in terms of maybe a successor to Matthew Stafford. They do have Stetson Bennett from last year. For me, if I'm the Rams, I think they need Aaron Donald is now gone, and they drafted really well last year throughout that draft. They got some guys deeper in the draft that have really helped them out, Kobe Turner, etc. But I think they go back to the defensive front. And this is a guy that has a chance to potentially be the best pass rusher in the draft. He's dealt with a lot of injuries over his career, so it's again hard to rank him. On my big board, I have him at 19. That is Laiatu Latu, the edge rusher from UCLA, 6'5", 259, could be the most skilled pass rusher in the class. He was first in FBS in pressures and pressure percentage, 10.5 sacks, was 9th in the country, and that was back in 2022. He was just as good as in 2023. Maybe a little bit inconsistent versus the run, high IQ, had a lot of strip sacks, always went for the ball, which is what I like, but the medical is the issue. If there was no medical, he might be a top 10, top 15 guy. He's had to deal with 2 neck injuries in his 2 seasons at Washington, didn't play for 3 years, transferred to UCLA. Those new doctors ended up clearing him. Washington wouldn't, UCLA does. He gets out back on the field, and he's been fantastic as a pass rusher. So you got to look at the neck injury. It's a little bit of a red flag. We'll see how far that pushes him down the boards. But at the surface, could be the best pass rusher or maybe the most skilled pass rusher in the class. We'll have to find out. Your guys' thoughts on Laiatu Latu?
He's got a tremendous variety of pass rush moves. He can spin, he can go outside, he can dip, he can work the bull to speed. He's got a lot of versatility. I would be very concerned about his neck injury. I mean, he missed 3 years of football because of a neck. I mean,
and medically retired. He retired.
He retired, yes. That was a word that I had seen studying this. But Chip Kelly must have had something going on down there to get him back.
Got some good doctors over there.
If he were not a health concern, I think he has great upside because of his potential to come off the edge and just wreak havoc. They do some sort of splash play rate that I read about. I mean, I'm not sure quite how that's calculated, but he is a big-time playmaker, and he's got a great bend running the edge. He could be a terrific player if he could potentially stay healthy.
Again, it kind of, if you go back to Jalen Phillips at his time a little bit at UCLA, they both were number 15. You look at a little similar player. We'll see if he can get over the medical and how he decides to do if he can get out on the field. I know a lot of teams nervous about that neck. So I'll take us to the Steelers at number 20. Offensive line has been kind of the talk for Pittsburgh. They get Broderick Jones last year. Doesn't start, but comes in and plays very well at right tackle towards the end of that season. But for me, guys, I'm going in a different direction, at least personally. They trade Deontay Johnson, and this is where I have them taking my sleeper, Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU, 20th overall to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, I think center and offensive tackle they've been linked to in terms of some of those other guys that Matt brought up, Amarius Mims, et cetera, going forward. Graham Barton, who is a big center, they could end up taking him and playing him at the center position. They do need a center in Pittsburgh. But I'm going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. after they get rid of Deontay Johnson. I know that's probably not going to be the pick. That's just what I want to see happen. Pittsburgh, known for drafting their receivers and getting good ones in the second, third round, day 2. Not known for really taking receivers in the first round because they think they can get really good receivers, and they've proven it in day 2 in the middle, some of the middle rounds. So I don't necessarily think they're going to go this direction. It's what I would do, but offensive line might be what they think is the preference at pick 20 for Pittsburgh. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I haven't taken a center.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't taken either.
Barton?
Well, I think Barton's going to be off the board by then. So
Could
I
be.
have Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon. I think goes, which I know is a little touch high because I know he's like floating in between that late first, early second. But I really think that's kind of what Pittsburgh does, right?
They value offensive line.
They value offensive line.
And as
so.
they should. What do you guys think about Steelers' preference here?
Lineman.
Lineman.
Sure. Yeah.
I would agree, and I think Barton will be available myself. I think the other, that would be a stretch for anybody else and not a huge need.
Yeah.
The good thing about Barton is he can play both guard and center.
Yep. And again, if Barton doesn't go at 20, I've got him going 21 to the Miami Dolphins. They need a center and a guard. Robert Hunt leaving in free agency, signing that big deal elsewhere. That leaves Miami with, again, Armstead also banged up at the top of that line, or offensive line. So I wouldn't surprise me. I have Graham Barton going there in my mock if he's available there, or one of these offensive tackles. J.C. Latham on the board as we gone through it a little bit in some of ours. But either way, one of those tackles would be there. So for me, it's going to be an offensive lineman for Miami, almost a no-brainer there for the Dolphins.
Yep.
Taking us to the Philadelphia Eagles, we talked to Martin a lot about it. Defense finished second to last in passing yards and passing touchdowns allowed.
This is going to be interesting.
Linked to an offensive tackle. Sources is Howie Roseman has already been calling around and trying to prepare to trade up. You heard Martin say he thinks that's probably how it's going to go as well.
Yeah.
And that seems to be how it might look on Thursday. He's never drafted, Howie, a corner, a tight end, a running back, or a safety in round 1. So what do they do this year, guys? It seems like maybe offensive line, but if they can trade up, I think that cornerback thing comes to a drought. I said earlier in the program, I'd love to see Terrion Arnold in Eagle Green. If that's tough to do, I'm not sure how far they can get up in the draft. But again, DB, offensive line is where I think it will be at 22. Coach, what do you think your biggest need is for the Eagles?
You know, when I listen to Martin, I probably agree that they will trade up, and I think with a general manager like Roseman, you don't try to outguess him.
Yeah.
And I think what the trend has been throughout his career, he's going to stay that way. I don't think he's going to switch. So, I mean, personally, I think their need is safety, though I'm not sure in this draft you take a safety.
Maybe if Cooper
it's
DeJean is sitting there at 22.
You could even see them back up if they wanted, unless they felt like they had to stretch. To me, when you talk about playing cover 2, you've got to have a middle linebacker that can cover the middle of the field, and you've got to have 2 safeties that can play out in a lot of space. And Fangio is a great coach, and they'll do a good job. But I think a safety would be up their alley, though I'm sure that's probably not something the Eagles would think about. And they were, of course, with some injuries last year. Their nickel was a problem at times, too, with Maddox being hurt. So they're going to need some help somewhere in the defensive backfield. And
if Cooper DeJean, and with that reputation, does, if that consensus by Thursday is he's going to be a safety, that could allow him to slip to the Eagles at 22, and with that versatility, you can play him outside or at safety. And now you bring back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I would love to see a Cooper
who I'm
DeJean.
a big fan of.
I love him.
I love the versatility of Gardner. He's a terrific pass rusher from the edge.
And if you have him now and Cooper DeJean at safety, I think you're looking a lot better in the secondary there for Philadelphia. We'll see if DeJean falls there, or maybe they take one of those offensive tackles that might be left over in my mock 1.0. To me, it's J.C. Latham if he's still available for Philadelphia. And again, guard and tackle can play both of those. Lane Johnson, probably 1 year left, and maybe they move him out to right tackle come next year. To the Vikings at 23. This is where I have on mine J.J. McCarthy. Obviously, it seems like he'll be a top 10 pick. A lot of people, it seems like, are heading to the top of the draft like the gold rush to get up there to get J.J. McCarthy. We'll see if that comes to fruition on Thursday night. Team needs defensive line, quarterback, offensive line. Could go a bunch of different ways. If it's not McCarthy for me, I have them taking Penix. If somebody else trades up for McCarthy and they stay put at 23, wouldn't shock me if they take Michael Penix here for the Vikings at 23, or maybe even Bo Nix, depending how they feel about the quarterback situation. That takes us to 24, and the Dallas Cowboys, their first pick of the draft, coming here at 24, losing some guys up front on that offensive line. It could be a definite to see the Cowboys draft one of these offensive linemen, or maybe they take a skill position guy. They do need a wide receiver. Obviously, running back not going to be in the cards here at 24 unless they were to trade down. For me, I have Tyler Guyton, the offensive tackle from Oklahoma, going to the Cowboys. A lot of people have linked the Texas wide receiver Xavier Worthy, who broke the combine record with a 4.21, as maybe a skill position guy that they have been targeting. For me, I see Tyler Guyton staying kind of close to home, was at Oklahoma, and then going to be a Dallas Cowboy. I think they go offensive line.
I have a different Texas wide receiver. I have A.D. Mitchell.
Ooh, I hope that's not the case. I'm a big A.D. Mitchell
That's what I have
guy.
on mine as
A.D.
well.
Mitchell, number 20 on my big board. Let's talk about the guy from Texas. 6'4", 196. With that size, guys, ran a 4.35 at the combine. One drop all of last season. Outstanding size, a great route runner for his size, and a big-time red zone target. 11 touchdowns. Started his career at Georgia, transferred over to Texas to be near his daughter, who lives in Houston. That was kind of the method for him leaving Georgia. And another big year. He's produced at every school he's been to. You can see some of these highlights here. Him and Worthy. Some people have Mitchell ranked ahead of Worthy, Worthy ahead of Mitchell. I'm a big A.D. Mitchell guy. 20 on my big board. A dream scenario, I think, for him would be 28 if he gets there to the Buffalo Bills. They desperately need a receiver. Without Gabe Davis, they trade Stephon Diggs. I think it's a dream matchup if they can somehow acquire A.D. Mitchell, whether that be trading up or if they stay put at 28 and have him fall there. But again, I'm a big A.D. Mitchell guy as well here at 20 on my big board.
No, I'm with you.
So again, I hope he's not a Dallas Cowboy, but we'll find out there where the Cowboys picking at 24, excuse me, on Thursday night. Now to the Green Bay Packers at number 25. Defensive line, offensive line, linebacker, and DB. 5 picks in the first 91 for Green Bay, so they're going to have maybe some stuff to move around in the draft. For Green Bay here at 25, I'm going with Nate Wiggins, the corner out of Clemson. They need help in that secondary. Maybe even Jared Verse, the talented edge rusher from Florida State. But I'm going to go with Wiggins. What do you guys think the biggest need for the Packers is here this year?
I think they need someone on the edge. I think this is where I see Chop Robinson.
Oh, it's a little Chop Robinson here. Yeah. Again, and go back on to watch a little bit of Chop Robinson, another guy that Coach and I had a chance to see up close and personal up in Happy Valley. 11.5 sacks in 35 career games. So maybe not the production in terms of sacks that you want, but you watch a 4.48 at 6'3", 254. A first step, maybe the best first step in terms of quickness out of any of these pass rushers. He is lightning fast off the edge. A 1.54 10-yard split. So that was kind of the big thing that separated him at that size. Being able to change direction like that has him flying up draft boards. You got to love what you see on tape. If you take a look here, I mean, watching him on tape, he really stands out with that speed to get off the edge and make plays in the run game and in the pass game for Chop Robinson. I don't hate that pick at all for Green Bay at 25.
Oh, I think it would be an exceptional one. He has a burst. He has that suddenness that we mentioned earlier on. He's very powerful. You identified the first step, which they really are focusing on now for these edge rushers. At times, though, his effort, his consistency in his effort was questioned. Now, that could be college, and the pros is completely different when you're playing for a lot of money and playing in a different system. They play for a lot of money in college now, too, as well.
That's true.
Yeah. I thought what was interesting about this guy when I studied him a little bit, he was 14 pounds at birth.
Oh, my goodness.
That's a big man.
That's why they call him Chop. That's right, because a pork chop.
Yes.
That's right, I forgot.
This guy can play. I think it would just be a question, is he going to be consistent enough day in and day out?
It's a big baby.
Again, you look at the
Big
film,
baby.
you look at some of those measurements, and you think, wow, he could be a difference maker there at 25 for Green Bay. And that's, I kind of think, that range. He's kind of creeping up there. Was early second round. He's made his way into potentially the end of the first round here for Chop Robinson. That'll take us to 26, and Dennis's Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They need a few things. Dennis, we're going to get your opinion here. Very active on the pro day circuit. They visited with all the top pass rushers in the class. They seemed like they want one of those guys. For me, I have Jared Verse, the edge out of Florida State. I don't think he should still be there at 26. If he does happen to be, I think he's up there for me with the top of these guys. It's going to be, again, tough come Thursday to kind of rank these pass rushers. But for me, I have Chop Robinson at 29, and I have Jared Verse a little bit higher up there in my top 14. I've got him actually at 14, but I have him here now at 26 to the Bucs, just the way that some of these have gone. I think he'd be a steal for the Buccaneers at 26. Dennis, if you could hear us, what do you think? He said he wants Chop Robinson. We'll see which one falls there. But
I hope
Tampa
he's there
Bay,
for you.
Yeah.
but could go a corner. We'll see. But to me, it seems like they're going to take a rusher. I have Jared Verse. You guys, what do you think?
Yeah, I think also Marshawn Nealon from Western Michigan is a possibility there, and Darius Robinson from Missouri.
Darius Robinson, another pass rusher.
I think he's a little underrated. Myself and I agree with you. He should probably be available then. Now maybe they go somewhere else. But this guy has an array of moves. He's a pretty solid player. I think he's been under the radar, and I think he'd be a very savvy choice here.
I have him just inside my first round. I got him 32 on my big board you guys talked about. Started off his career in Missouri as a defensive tackle, so he can play a lot of those techniques up front defensively. He transformed his body a little bit, got a little bit faster. Very physical and powerful. Again, not known for the speed, but he's a bully rusher. Will get by you there. 8.5 sacks in 2023. For me, I got him going to the Detroit Lions at number 29. He's a hometown kid, grew up a Lions fan. A lot of pictures of him as a kid going to training camp, getting autographs with the Detroit Lions. I think it would be cool to see that come full circle. And him with Aiden Hutchinson, also a Michigan kid in Detroit, as they take Darius Robinson. I have at 29 to the Detroit Lions, but definitely could go earlier for sure. He's been moving up some boards as well. A nice Senior Bowl week for him down in Mobile, Alabama. To now the Cardinals, who picked their second pick of the draft. They got 4 Marvin Harrison Jr. Now here they are at 27. Could trade out. Who knows, maybe trade back up. This pick from Houston for the Cardinals at 27. And I've got him taking Kool-Aid McKinstry, the other corner from Alabama. I think they need help in that secondary. McKinstry, versatile, can even play a little bit of the nickel. I think that wouldn't be an issue for him. Can also play outside. One of the top high school recruits, has been one of the best corners in college football over the last 2 years. A little bit of an injury towards the end of last season. Didn't work out at the combine or anything like that, but he seems to be cleared now ahead of the draft. I've got him going in the first round, and in this case, 27 to the Arizona Cardinals. Jason, a lot of mocks had him going to the Ravens at 30. What do you think of Kool-Aid McKinstry?
I like Kool-Aid. I mean, the drink and the player, you know. So, I think he has a great. Hate to say this term, but he has a great ball skills. He has nose for the ball. If it's in the air, he's going to get it more often than not. But the foot injury scares me with him as a first-round pick. So I don't have him going at 27 to Arizona. I actually have Newton from Illinois being drafted at 27.
Yeah, and again, right behind Byron Murphy is Jazair Newton from Illinois. I like him as well. Got him 27th on my big board, 7.5 sacks last season. Versatile, powerful, but the best thing about him, guys, 715 snaps, was 7th in the FBS among D-line. He rarely came out, which is rare for a defensive tackle to get that much work in. I think he's right below Byron Murphy, but I think he'll be maybe the other defensive tackle coming off the board here towards the end of the first round. So it wouldn't surprise me there either. Coach, have you done any work on Newton from Illinois?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of tape on him, and I do like him, and I love his durability, and I think that certainly will bode well for him in the pros. You've got to be able to not only play when you're healthy, but you've got to play when you're banged up, and it seems like he's been able to weather that storm and figure that out.
Yes, hey, best ability is availability. That's what they like to say. To 28, and the Buffalo Bills, interesting, right? They got to go receiver. You trade or you lose Gabe Davis in free agency. You trade Stephon Diggs. I believe there's 3 wide receivers on the roster, and the only name that I seem to be remembering now is Khalil Shakir. So they need somebody there on the outside for Josh Allen. I don't think they want to roll in and trade Diggs and have him with no weapons on the outside in a big year without Stephon Diggs. So for me, it's A.D. Mitchell if he's there at 28. If not, you've got a couple other guys such as Xavier Worthy. I love Ricky Pearsall from Florida. A couple different options at receiver, but A.D. Mitchell would be, in my opinion, the biggest upside for Buffalo here at 28. And we already referenced a little bit of A.D. Mitchell. Do you guys see Buffalo going any different spot there? It's got to be a receiver, right?
Potentially, depending on if McKinstry's available, I could see them maybe taking a
Wouldn't
quarterback.
hurt. Yeah, no Tre'Davious White. And, of course, my boy Kyer Elam from Florida, not working out as maybe they would have liked from a couple years ago in the first round. So I say they go receiver. Could be a corner. We'll find out. 29. I haven't taken hometown kid Darius Robinson as the Detroit Lions, who have been known to pick in the top 6 for the last couple of years. Here they are at 29. Interesting to see. I've got him taking Darius Robinson. Again, a big-time senior week for him, climbing up the draft boards. And I have him in the first round. It's a first-round pick and a first-round grade. And that'll take us to Jason McCall's Baltimore Ravens. Team needs, at least, Jason, we'll see if you agree with this, DB, offensive line, edge, and wide receiver. Offensive tackle for the first time in 8 years, maybe coming up in this round. What do you think?
No, I don't see it.
So where do they go?
I think we go wide.
Trade back?
No, I think we stay. I think we go wide receiver, and it's been talks all season long. They really like Keon Coleman with this pick from Florida State.
Yeah, I like Keon Coleman as well from Florida State. A big year for them. Again, the thing with him dropping is that 40 he ran at the combine, I believe in the 4.5s, late 4.5s, maybe in a 4.6. Completely not what people thought, but you look at his game speed, he measures one of the fastest game speeds in all of college football when you put the pads on and play. So again, take what you want from the 40. I like Keon Coleman. I have him there as 35 on my big board, but wouldn't hate if he went to the Ravens there at number 30. Doesn't seem far off like a first-round pick for me. Your guys' thoughts on Baltimore? Again, just unable to get over the hump this past year, but again, we're going to have one of the best teams maybe in the league again next season.
Well, they're going to have to replace Moses, so they might go with an offensive lineman here, but
And that's
it depends
where I
on
have,
availability, and I certainly wouldn't argue with your choice, Jason, but I personally think from what I've observed of them, that's probably where their biggest need would be if you were talking about the first round.
And here's Keon Coleman. You can see the game speed from him. I really like
and
what
I saw him
out
play in
of
person
him.
in the ACC championship game. So, that.
And again, tough close to the year for Florida State without Jordan Travis, who you'll see it in this draft as well. But Keon Coleman, I really like Keon Coleman. For my mock draft, Jason, I'm going with the tackle. I've got Amarius Mims from Georgia. Again, one of the biggest unknowns. I mean, could go really high, could go really low. 8 starts at Georgia in 3 years, partially to injury. Quickness and power, though, off the charts. He has all the tools. If he can, again, get some more game time, the 8 starts is what kind of throw people off of Amarius Mims.
I'll raise you Mims, and if we're not taking Keon Coleman, Jordan Morgan.
Jordan Morgan, yeah. Arizona. Battled some injuries as well, but has been healthy last year.
He can play all on the line, so that's
He's
kinda
very
what you need.
versatile,
Yeah.
and he's a very good run blocker, which would certainly fit into their game plan.
Jordan Morgan can play tackle or guard. Athletic, very athletic, average size, but of course makes up for it with that athleticism. Could definitely see him at 30 for sure. That takes us to 31. And Matthew Maurer, San Francisco 49ers. You see some of the teammates here. What do you think they need more than anything?
Offensive line. offensive line.
So you're maybe hoping that you can maybe see Amarius Mims here. That would be maybe a dream scenario.
I actually would prefer Jordan Morgan just because he gives us the versatility.
Yeah.
I think because we got some holes. It's just, and then maybe Roger Rosengarten from Washington. I think
been
he's
flying up the
underrated.
board as well.
I'd like either one of those guys. I like offensive linemen that have a little bit of versatility. They can float over to the guard, float over to the tackle, depending on where you need them. And we that's what we need. We need versatility on offensive line. I mean, other than Aaron Banks and, of course, the silverback, we don't really have anything else. That's just how it goes.
How many years Trent Williams has left also up for question, maybe one or two. And Morgan, of course, can play guard, slide out the tackle once Trent Williams.
And I could see
wraps
us,
it up.
depending if was it Power Johnson?
Yeah, he might
or
be there as
Barton's
well.
not there, not taken. We could probably maybe take a center as well.
Yeah, maybe
Wouldn't
Zach
shock me.
Frazier from West Virginia as well, going to be in the mix for some of these center positions. So San Francisco and Baltimore, again, both could go offensive line towards the end of the draft. Maybe some other teams trade up. That takes us to Kansas City. Once again, picking at number 32, the Super Bowl champion Chiefs. All the talk last year was you can't win without any wide receivers. Well, they did it again. Most drops out of any team in the NFL didn't matter as you have Patrick Mahomes, and
right.
he leads them to another Super Bowl back-to-back
That bull,
for
Pat
the
Mahomes.
Kansas City Chiefs. And
I try to tell him.
but they draft Rashee Rice last year, not an early pick, but they draft
Hater.
him. He has a phenomenal, I'm not going to say phenomenal, but has a very good rookie year for Kansas City, but obviously he's dealing with some off-the-field issues. 8 charges right now for Rashee Rice. Not sure when he'll be back and if possible. We'll find out. So for me, it's got to be a wide receiver, and I'm taking the most dynamic guy left on the board, and that is Xavier Worthy, the wide receiver from Texas. 4.21, breaking the combine record for the 40. To me, it's not just speed. Of course, you see the 40, and you go back and you got to watch the film. It's not about speed. His hands have gotten a lot better. 2 years ago, dropped a lot of balls. Last year, I think he made a lot of strides in that regard. Not a lot of drops. The hands looked a lot better. Nobody's as quick as this guy. He's a good route runner, even though he's kind of more of an inside slot guy. Can take the top off the defense, as you can see here. 4.21 speed's hard to come by. A little bit of Hollywood Brown to his game here for Kansas City, who just got Hollywood Brown in the offseason. So Xavier Worthy can do it in the punt return game, as you're seeing on your screen now. Again, when you look at the speed, and me as well, you think, hey, he's just a fast guy. I don't like may rank those guys too high. We've seen it a lot in the past. You look at your John Rosses and your guys like that and some of those mistakes. I think he's better. I think he's a better version. I think he's more of a complete receiver than some of those past speedy guys. I've got him 32 here to Kansas City.
How do I say Tyreek Hill?
Ooh.
He reminds me of him. And I really like the fact that matchup in the slot and the way the Kansas City offense works. You can move him around. You can keep him in the slot. I think he'd be a really difficult matchup. I love, obviously, his punt return skills and his other playmaking skills. I mean, he's raw, but under Andy Reid in that offense, and who wouldn't want to play with Patrick Mahomes?
And
he can make a lot of pretty good players look great.
And you look at maybe some of that. They were trying to fill that role, right? They go back, they draft Sky Moore to play out of the slot. That doesn't work out. They trade for Kadarius Toney. He's supposed to be their guy out of the slot. That doesn't work out. So 2 tough ones there. Maybe they find their guy that they can run alongside Rashee Rice whenever he comes back here in Xavier Worthy. I think he's a dynamic, versatile playmaker. And I do like the guy out of Texas. Both those guys, receivers out of Texas, I think could be very impressive. Though just 5'11", 165 pounds. 75 catches, 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns last year. I like what I see out of Xavier Worthy. That takes us through the first round. Guys, as we close up on our draft special, just what stood out to you? What are you looking to pay attention to on Thursday, or maybe the theme of the draft coming up this week in Detroit?
Trades.
Yeah, I think so, too. I think we can be saying so.
I think after probably 12, you're going to see a bunch of trades.
I think we can see some even before then as well. The big question I'm going to be looking for is, where does J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix go? Are the Giants really going to trade up from 6 to go get one of those guys? Is it going to be Minnesota, who now has 11 and 23 to package to move up? It's going to be interesting come Thursday. Again, going to be one of the mysterious drafts I think we've had in a long time. It's going to be a fun one Thursday night. Matt, you looking for anything in particular?
Yeah, I'm
With the
really
Niners
good. Well, yeah, of course. I'm interested in the Niners. I'm interested in the Eagles, obviously, because let's be honest, Howie hasn't done great at drafting defensive players. It is what it is. Draft history, look, man, it's not great. But he did shore up a lot of good stuff during the free agency. So, I'm really interested to see this quarterback class, where it goes. And I know that, and we've gone through a list of guys, and I know there's going to be a guy that's going to get drafted, and none of us thought, yeah. He's probably got a 3rd-round grade on him or something, and he's going to be in that first round, and we're going to be like, what?
Big smokescreen week, right? All the names we've been hearing for the last week could be all just
that's a fact.
All could be a smokescreen. A lot of people like to lie this time of year around the league and in the NFL. So Thursday in Detroit, 8 o'clock. It's been a long, fun draft process, but all going to come to a close on Thursday night. And then, of course, we get into NBA playoff and NBA draft season here just around the corner. Coach, really appreciate your time. As always, we know you're so busy, so thank you so much for coming and
my pleasure. I was going to say, after listening to you three, I don't need to watch on Thursday. I'm so well versed now because of you guys. No, I think it is going to be a very interesting draft. I read an interesting article today that you two would like. Over the last 5 years, this article said that the Ravens had the best draft for the last 5 years, and the 49ers, I'm a big John Lynch fan, 3rd. So certainly we'll watch their picks because of past performance. They were 8th. They were 8th.
Oh,
yes.
Wow. That's surprising to me. Again, we go back and we talk. I would have loved, we already had our draft show. Was it last year, 2 years ago? Wanted Kyle Hamilton to the Eagles. They did not. They took Jordan Davis.
And you would have been a genius because I think he is my favorite player that we did all season long.
And we sat here. We talked about it.
Hamilton.
We talked about it. I thought
we
they
love
might
him too.
do it. And
Yes, very much so.
But Howie, of
That
course,
was a lot
didn't
of fun,
draft
Nick.
the same
And,
dude, for sure.
I really enjoyed being with you three here tonight. It was a lot of fun and very interesting.
Hey guys, it was a lot of fun as always. Really appreciate everybody's time, and a special, of course, shout out to Martin Frank from the News Journal for giving us a little insight on what the Eagles might do on Thursday night. Well, there you have it, a mock draft, a draft special here on DETV. It's going to be a fun one on Thursday for everyone up here, as well as Dennis Pritchett back behind the glass running things. We will see you next Monday with a draft recap and a little NBA playoff action right here on DETV. We'll see you then.
Go Niners.